Hey, Paris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. You have a podcast, and your podcast is called Shit's Fucked Podcast. Can you talk to me about that? Why is the podcast called Shit's Fucked?
Great question. So basically, I don't know. The way that it came about was, I don't know. It just came to me instantly when I was thinking, what the fuck do I want to call my podcast? And I was just thinking about all the shit that is fucked, like in my life, and I was like, shit's fucked. There we go. Done. So that's why I picked it, but also because it resonates a lot with the kind of people that I wanted to target. So my podcast is very much based on mental health and addiction recovery. And I don't know, maybe I'm being like, I don't want to stereotype or anything like that, but I do find a lot of people that have experienced those types of challenges in their lives love to curse, and they have responded very well to that. So yeah, that was also the other thing. It's a bit of a shock value too, a bit of a good icebreaker.
It is. No, definitely. Yeah. What prompted you to initially start a podcast? And you mentioned mental health. How did this sort of eventuate?
So this came about in September 2023, and I was just in a place where I was still like early days in addiction recovery. Like I was still lapsing. I wasn't totally sober at this point. And so for those listening, alcohol was something I was addicted to for 17 years. Methamphetamines was 10 years. And so and I'd also been diagnosed with complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder. But when I was just really struggling to, I guess, get my shit together. And I didn't know where to start. And it took me a while to actually get some professional help because I was very much staying in my little shame bubble. I didn't want to let people in. I was just keeping people at arm's length because I thought in my head I was protecting them. And this is what was serving me at that point of time. So I didn't get professional help for a really long time, even though I did see a psychologist throughout that time. But I didn't tell her jack shit. I was not honest. It was like a checkbox, like tick, just to get people off my back, really. So I don't really count that. But I then just finally got to see an AOD counselor, so an alcohol and other drug counselor, and I just got opened up to a lot of the different pathways there are to heal. Like when I was thinking about, how do I recover? How do I sort my life out? I was thinking like NA, AA, rehab, and that was about it. I didn't really have a lot of knowledge on anything else. I didn't know much about meditation. I didn't know anything about somatic exercises, breath work, like coaches. I didn't know about any of this stuff. And so when she kind of opened me up a little bit more onto what other resources are available, I just thought, man, I would have loved to have had this information all in one place. So that's what the podcast is like I interview a lot of different people who are either working in the mental health or alcohol and other drug sectors, or they're frontliners, or they're coaches, or they do some kind of holistic practice, holistic medicine, even like really just exploring all the different avenues, but then also the lived experience too. So it's to help people kind of see what is out there, what's available, and to educate people a little bit more because I wasn't, and I just thought I think this is something that would be really good to have.
Yes. So, what was the turning point, Paris, where you said enough is enough?
It's funny because I wouldn't say I had a specific turning point. I mean, I had a few moments where I was like, okay, I've had a shift in perspective. And I would say I'm a slow learner, right? Like I had a lot of rock bottom moments, like a lot. And I didn't snap out of it straight away, but I did. It was like a seed was planted every time. And then the more that it did happen, it was like, okay, now I'm starting to grow a little bit more through those experiences. And then I eventually got to a point where I would say there was two big instances, one in 2019, 2020, so very much COVID times, and then another one in 2023. So the first one was I was actually over living in Melbourne and I was not doing well. I had fully like relapsed with methamphetamines. I was using that daily. I was going into drug-induced psychosis. So I was hallucinating. Reality was not reality. I was an absolute fucking Looney Tune. Like I was seeing the weirdest shit. And because of that, I was really acting out. I was really acting out. I was scaring my friends. And I ended up getting into a psych ward because I also became like really, really suicidal. So I got put into a psych ward. And then at that point of time, everything just really fell apart. This was, yeah, end of 2019. So I ended up losing like my best friend of 17 years because she was living with me during that time. And it was just traumatizing for her. She just couldn't deal with that. And I totally understand that now. But back then it was very much like, I'm being abandoned, like, oh my goodness, I'm left alone. And then my partner did the same thing. He left. I was like, look, everyone's just leaving me in my time of need. Had my little violin going. And so then after that, I just got to a point where I was so exhausted. I decided I need to come back to WA. And because of COVID, that was not an easy feat. I mean, WA was on really hard lockdowns. I got rejected like 3 times, but I'm also pretty sure I wasn't filling out those applications properly because I was pretty high every time I was doing it. But let's we won't focus on that though. But when I finally got approved, it was around the time of like June 2020 when the restrictions started to lift in Melbourne. So people were starting to like go out. You could be around more than 20 people. You didn't have curfew anymore. And it was like the first week of that happening. So as I was in the air, there was like a big outbreak. And so when I landed, you can imagine, WA being like so firm on their lockdowns, then just finding out, oh my God, there's been like multiple outbreaks in Melbourne. We've got a plane full of people coming in from Melbourne. They panicked. They panicked. And so I was actually coming down on the flight. I laugh now. It was not funny. I honestly felt like butthole. It was terrible. I looked like butthole, felt like butthole. It was terrible. And I got off that plane and I had to be interviewed to be like, where have you been? Like, have you been through any of these hotspots? I'm looking gray. I'm sweating. I look ill. So they're looking at me like, she's got the Rona. Like, she has got it. And I'm like, oh my God, they know I'm doing drugs. Like, I'm just freaking out, low key freaking out. So then I was denied approval to quarantine with my mum, which had been originally approved. So I was forced into a 14-day quarantine by myself, which was a huge moment because I, at that point in time, had been a daily user for quite some time and I hadn't had a clear head in ages. So to suddenly be like coming down in quarantine by myself, I don't have access to anything, no alcohol, no meth, none of that. I really had to sit with my shit. I had to sit there and face it, and it was horrible. I was even still experiencing psychosis on the first day, which was not pleasant. But yeah, finally getting to that point of realizing, oh my God, like, what have I been doing like the last year, 2 years of my life? Like, this has been hell. What the fuck? Like, what am I doing? And so, yeah, that was kind of the moment where I was like, right, maybe I need to get some professional help. That was when I first called the AOD counselor, was in quarantine, because I was like, what I'm doing is not working, obviously. So let's try something differently. And I did not want to go to a support group. I couldn't think of anything worse at that point in time. So I was like, I'll just stick to this lady one-on-one behind closed doors. No one has to see me. So that was kind of when things really like made a prominent shift. I did still lapse after that. I never relapsed again. So I didn't go into like the daily using. I would, I'd pick up meth. It'd be like one night, and then the next day I'd be straight back onto no, I need to stop this. So it was starting to change in that perspective. But then I had another reality hit Gotta love them. In 2023, and I guess for this point of time, I hadn't really acknowledged that alcohol was a problem though, because alcohol is so socially acceptable, right? Especially here in Australia, like we know. And I wasn't really willing to admit that that was an issue. I was very much like, meth is like real bad. Like, that's the fucked up thing. Like, I'm not doing meth though. Like, alcohol, that's fine. It's all good. But it wasn't until I started to really act out on alcohol. I managed to get sober from meth for a year. So, like, all of 2022, I was sober. And then I don't know. I got really, really drunk. It initiated physical cravings for methamphetamines. And damn, I worked my hardest to get my little hands on it. And I got it. I got it. And I ended up using, and I threw that year to the wind and had a lapse. And it was horrible because I really hurt my loved ones at that moment. Like my partner now, I lied to him. He didn't know where I was. I'd lied to my friends. They were all really upset with me, and I'd been doing like so well in that area that I finally had to sit with myself and be like, okay, I think alcohol is actually an issue here now because I haven't had a lapse sober for quite some time. Like, I haven't actually actively seeked meth unless I've been drinking. And so then that was a moment of like, okay, I need to actually recognize this for what it is and I need to do something about it. So I did go 3 months abstinent. I do still drink now, but I've really changed my relationship with alcohol. Like, it's no longer a crutch for me. It's not an emotional need. I don't need it for social situations. I'm honestly actually at that point now because I drink so little. I'm like, I don't even know if there's a point to it anymore. So I'm at that point in my journey now. But yeah, so those were those few big moments in the most recent past that had kind of put me on the trajectory to, I guess, being where I am today.
Did you ever experience suicidal thoughts, especially at your lowest points?
Yes, it was a common occurrence for me. So as someone with borderline personality disorder, and just overall not being a very happy person, like I mean, the reason I went to drugs and alcohol in the first place is because I wasn't a happy person. And I started drinking very young. I was like 13. So I'm 32 now. So it's yeah, I was a daily drinker from 13. And that
Yeah.
was because I wasn't happy. Like, I had a lot of childhood trauma. There was a lot of things going on in my life that led me to the point of needing to soothe, to self-medicate. And that became my best buddies because they made me feel better. And without them, I was not well. I mean, was I well on them? No, but I was not well without them either. So it was a bit of a catch 22 there. And yeah, so that's been a lot of work in having to find like my own happiness and peace as well. That's been a big part of my recovery because they were the core reasons why I went to it. I mean, even Gabe Mate always says like we shouldn't ask why the addiction, but why the pain. This is what is leading to it. It's not the addiction itself that's the problem, it's what's caused it. So yeah, so that's been something that I've just had to work on for a really long time.
Yeah, addiction and recovery, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, Paris? Because you're right, we are all on this trajectory in life and there's so many different pathways we can go and sometimes we go down a dark road and it's generally the pain just becomes unbearable where you're just forced to change.
Mm.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
That's my favorite
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. So what does recovery look like for you today?
So for today, I guess like honestly the podcast helps me a lot, even though I don't use it as a reason to maintain my sobriety. But I think just keeping it on the forefront, like why I'm here and I'm doing what I'm doing, kind of fuels me to stay away from that. And also, I guess I like to tell people a really big way of me being able to achieve where I am now has been to create a life that I really love, because I hated my life before. And now it's like I could not consciously throw that away. I've worked so hard to be where I am now that that would mean losing everything if I did that. And I just cannot justify it because I love my life that much. So really creating a life that I love has been so helpful, doing the podcast work. But I also did my studies in alcohol and other drugs and mental health, because I found as well that one of the things that I guess fuels my fire is helping other people come out of these dark places, because I've been there. Like, I know what it's like, and it's a horrible existence, sorry. It's like you're not living, you're literally just existing, and it's yeah, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. And to be able to come out the other side and be like, oh my God, there is a way out of this. I'm like, I want to help others in that area. So I knew I couldn't just rely on my lived experience, because, that's very biased. We all have very different experiences in these areas. I wanted to get properly educated around it so I could help in a bigger way. So now I'm actually about to launch a new business called Your Recovery, which is a one-on-one support, but also self-paced courses for mental well-being and addiction recovery. Because I also have learnt that a lot of our systems in regards to mental health and addiction can, I wouldn't say they're very client-led, and I wouldn't say that they focus on every element of their life. They very much go into, all right, this is the presenting issue. We'll deal with that. We'll slap a band-aid on that. See you later. Bye. They don't look at what else is happening in this person's life for them to be where they are right now. What's happening in their social circle? What's their housing situation like? What are their finances like? Really looking into that, I think, is missed out on a lot. We don't really have a holistic or comprehensive approach in that area. So yeah, that in itself has been a drive on maintaining where I'm at, because I've got big goals, I've got big dreams, and yeah, that is fueling the fire to get me there.
Yeah. What have you found out about our current mental health system, and what is it that people need to acknowledge when someone's going through a recovery center?
It's really hard, because one of the things that I've noticed a lot, particularly when it comes to mental health and addiction, right? They are absolutely intertwined. Absolutely intertwined. But you will find in a lot of our healthcare systems, they're treated separately. So they will say, we can't deal with the addiction until like the mental health sorted, or we can't deal with the mental health until the addiction sorted. But you really need to be dealing with them together, because they coexist. And there's reason for that. They have obviously had, often coming from, pain, like, or a trauma or something that's happened in their life that has led them to self-medicate. So you need to deal with both at the same time. So that's something that I think is to be mindful of, is trying to find places that have a little bit more of a holistic approach in that manner. The other thing, though, is that it's so hard. I've got a lot of comments. I've got a lot of thoughts and a lot of comments on this. Yeah, this Band-Aid response as well. We love a good crisis response. We're not really doing enough with the preventative care, that side of things. And I find as well that the resources that we do have available are so maxed out at capacity. Like, I was at an AOD conference not too long ago, and 50% of people, and this is Australia statistics, 50% of people who seek help don't get it because of the wait lists, or, it's just not financially accessible for them. There's so many factors in that. So it's really, it's hard. It's an absolute shit show, to be honest. If I'm going to put it bluntly. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in these sectors. But in saying that, people are recognizing that those conversations are happening. People are talking about it. So I do see there being a shift. I see that there's a lot more peer workers being recognized as well in the space. So people with lived experience in either addiction recovery or mental health, they're being brought more to the front, which is amazing. I think that's really, really good. As well as getting people with lived experience, I guess, in front of the groups of people who are in charge of, like the policymakers and people who are in charge of changing legislation as well, getting our voices heard because we know the experience firsthand, and having our input has been a big factor as well. So I know there are changes happening, like there are things going, but it's not going to happen overnight, right? Like it's going to be a very slow process. So I think in the meantime, it's still going to be a bit of a struggle for a while, but I do have hope that things will change. And yeah, hopefully there'll be more services like, my own business that I'm launching that will pop up that will make things more accessible and have more of a holistic approach as well.
Yes. What have you learnt about mental health in how it changes for women and men? Because we are very different. And I was talking to somebody just previously on another podcast, and women tend to bond face to face, whereas men tend to bond shoulder to shoulder. So our current mental health system is very much accommodating for women, but there's still a little bit of work required for men because I think male depression gets treated like female depression. But what have you learnt about that?
It's interesting you bring that up because I'm actually really passionate about that topic. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that probably don't agree with my views, but it's just this is where I'm at and what I've learnt and what I've observed. But I think men, a lot of the time, they're being compared to women, and we are so different. We are so different. We do not think the same. We don't act the same. We are totally wired completely differently. And so the approaches need to be different, it needs to be accommodating for both. So that's something that, and particularly for men, I've heard a lot of conversations around, you know, um, why aren't men talking more? Like, why aren't they sharing their feelings? Why are they getting themselves to this point where they're suppressing things and it's manifesting out in other ways, whether that's, extreme anger or extreme sadness or, even violent behavior that does happen. We're not really looking at, you know, what are we doing to actually start preventing that? And what are we teaching men to learn how to be resilient and to learn how to manage their own emotions? Because again, different to women, we have a very different way of processing our emotions, right? As do you guys. So I think that needs to be talked about more. I mean, a lot of the time when this conversation comes up, it often goes back to domestic violence, and it's often as a comparison. But I have started, talking to people as well. I'm hoping to get someone on the podcast soon, actually, who helps rehabilitate men after they've committed like a violent act, and to really start figuring out, what got them to that point, and, how they can unlearn those behaviors and move forward and be, safe within society again. I think it's important to still really look at these areas, why are our men in these places, and how can we help each other as well? Like, I feel like what me and my partner do in our relationship, I don't expect him at all to be able to do the things that I do, right? But I lean on him for his strengths, like he's very analytical, he's very logical, whereas I'm very emotional, right? I'm very in touch with that side of things. So we kind of use that to our advantage. And I would love to see that happening more within society. Like, if I'm looking at something that I would love more of an analytical, logical lens, I'll be like, hey, like, come have a look at this. Can you tell me how you see this? I need a different perspective because I'm seeing it this way. And he's really brought some great insight from doing that. But it's the same as vice versa. Like, he's starting to learn now how to communicate his feelings. And so now he feels safer and more comfortable to come and talk to me about things. And then I can help him kind of move through it. And I know a lot of other people probably feel like that's not like our duty, and I'm not saying it is either, but I do feel like we should be more of a team. That's my feelings around it anyway.
Yeah, we complement each other, men and women.
We
And
do.
yeah, and I think the growing disconnection and conundrum that a lot of men face, especially if they're in a committed relationship, is how do I express myself or how do I show vulnerability without it
Upsetting them.
upsetting them? Yeah, because men can cry.
Mm,
I believe that sometimes there's a time and a place to cry. And unfortunately, there are women, I think, that don't know how to handle male vulnerability, especially if that man cries or sheds a tear, and then a month or two later, that woman uses it against him in a future argument or weaponizes it against him. Women only get one shot with a man's vulnerability, one. And if you fumble the bag, he will never, ever open up to you again. Men are very sort of, we're very distant in that sense.
mm,
But I think also, like, it's very difficult to try and balance, showing vulnerability and emotions, but also, your partner, it's not their job to fix you, but I
mm,
guess it's a way of how you can articulate yourself and what you can do to better, coach your partner through what they're going through.
mm,
But how can women play a role in this? What can they do to try and really understand what men are going through? Because there's about 10,000 different things going on in a man's head that women just
mm.
have no clue about.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think it comes down to both sides in that scenario because it's around communication, right? So it's communicating, like the man learning how to communicate those feelings effectively. I know in the past I've dealt with, men going straight to anger, like skipping the sadness, going straight to anger. And then I don't respond to that well. So I can't meet them there, if that makes sense. But then it can happen vice versa as well, So I find there's been moments where like I've been really emotional and say someone's come to talk to me about how they're feeling because of something maybe I said or did, and then I've taken it really personally and then I've not responded effectively either. So I feel like it comes to both sides learning how to effectively communicate is what's going to be the saving grace. Because I've honestly, I've had to learn so much with my partner. Like we both have. We've done so much work in this area because it is key. It is so key. We barely fight because we are capable now of holding space for each other and effectively communicating. So even if I don't agree with what he's saying, I've learned now that I still need to hold the space. Like I still need to hold the space and allow him to still communicate, like, where he's at. And then I mean, sometimes I don't even necessarily say how I'm feeling about it. I just listen. I mean, I don't always do that. That's something that he tells me off about. I do try to fix. I do try to fix things, but I'm learning that sometimes he also just wants to be heard as well. Like he doesn't need me to fix it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
I do feel like it comes down to communication on both sides is learning how to effectively communicate, and I think we all need to learn how to do that as a society.
Yeah, we really do. Yeah, I think this is the biggest thing right now is, men and women are struggling in relationships. I'm writing a book about this for the last year and a bit. I've been writing about the mating crisis. Men and women obviously struggling in dating and relationships. And is it true that women tend to say what they feel and men say what they think?
Um, That's a hard one because I think that's personal. You know what I mean? I think
Mm,
that comes down to the individual because I know if I'm talking on behalf of like my partner for say, like he's pretty good at saying how he's feeling. But does he always recognize what those emotions are? Probably not. His vocabulary there isn't great. We've just started kind of looking into the emotions wheel. So I don't know if you've
yeah.
seen that. Yeah. So like really starting to learn how to identify those feelings as well. And then yeah, but he'll also share, what he's thinking as well. So yeah, I don't know. That was a tough one. It's kind of a mix.
It is, yeah, yeah. Did you happen to see the new Netflix series Adolescence?
I did. I
What did you
did.
think of that?
Um, I think that yeah, it's really tough because yeah, that one was a hard one. That was a hard one to watch, to be honest.
Mm.
And I do to be honest, to be totally honest, it actually reminded me a little bit like of my upbringing. Like dealt with a lot of anger in my household. So anger, I actually have a very uncomfortable relationship with. I don't feel safe with anything to do with anger. I myself struggle to express anger. I skip straight past it. Um, but for me, yeah, I have seen, how, I guess, adults in our life, like, and their behaviors and how they can impact, children and the types of environments they can create. Um, yeah, I think it's really important to be mindful of that. And that's something as well that I try to explain to my partner as well, because anger's a common emotion that he will go to, because I think that's the one that he commonly knows, and it's the easiest for him to access rather than going to sad. It's like straight to anger. Whereas I'm, yeah, total opposite. And I've had to really educate him a little bit more on, I understand like that's where you're at in that moment, and you just need to like release it and kind of just get it out of your system, as quickly as possible, because you don't want to hold that in any longer. I was like, but then there's the ripple effect on what's happening around you, and it creates not a very nice environment, I was like, and you start to walk on eggshells. You don't want to be upsetting that person in any way. And then, yeah, it can, other people can then learn those behaviors. Like, I have siblings who ended up learning those behaviors. And yeah, so that, I don't know, it was actually really hard for me to watch that show. It did remind me of a lot of dynamics that I've dealt with. But yeah, so I guess that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think also some of it might have been a little bit dramatized,
Yeah.
but it does open up questions about what our young kids are watching on social media. Now that Australia has restricted anybody under the age of 16, no social media, which I think is a good thing. I was
Mm.
born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, and I don't think I'd be able to handle the amount of dopamine that social media,
Yes.
inflicts in the brain.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, I just think young people just cannot comprehend the amount of dopamine. It's just way too much stimulation.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I do think also that, there is a growing concern, especially within young boys, about some of the people that they might be watching or looking up to. And obviously, Andrew Tate is a very controversial person, and everyone obviously has been talking about him. But I
Mm.
don't think he's to blame. I think this is a much bigger problem. I think, when I was growing up, I had my action stars. I had Jean Claude Van Damme, I had Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I had all these stars to look up to. And I've been heavily into martial arts all my life, Paris. I've been fighting for
Yeah.
over 30 years. And but I think young boys right now are lost. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, and that comes to a lot of contributing factors in just where we're at as a society today. I mean, there's so many pressures on our younger generations as well, like not just through social media, but even just like the cost of living. What does success look like? The school systems, like there's so many layers to that.
Yeah, I agree. And what about girls too? I think now more than ever, I think that there is a growing concern in mental health, especially in women. Now, I'm starting to hear more and more stats about some alarming statistics with regards to suicides, especially with young girls.
Yeah, and look, a lot of that has come from bullying as well, bullying at school. So, there is a lot of things going on. I actually, know a few teachers who are working in that space. And I actually did a podcast on this not too long ago about how our school systems aren't really setting up children to be emotionally intelligent. So like, that EQ, because if as soon as you understand how to regulate yourself, what emotions you're experiencing and how to navigate them, you're kind of set up to fail, essentially. So, we're not learning that at the ages that we should be. So this is why, a lot of these things are happening as well through the system. But it's also not just on the kids, it's also the parents. So, our older generations had a very different upbringing. There's very different beliefs there. Some of them still struggle with being vulnerable altogether. They were very much brought up with you don't talk about things like, you're crazy if you do, like, or it's shameful. And that's a lot of hard things to unlearn. And I do also really believe in intergenerational trauma as well. So yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard, but I do really think we need to start looking at what we're teaching kids in school in those areas. I think that needs to be put on the front line of things, but also still educating adults as well and helping to unlearn a lot of those beliefs and behaviors that have been adopted over all these generations.
Yeah, you mentioned generational trauma. What's that?
So that's when, like, you've kind of been going like you've gone through something traumatic, uh and say, for example, like, say my parents, right? I'll just make up a scenario. Say my parents had a very difficult upbringing where maybe one of their parents was totally emotionally unavailable. They couldn't talk to them, so they've learned to shut off, and they don't know how to open themselves up to anyone at all. And then that behavior is kind of being passed on. So it's being passed on to their children. It's been used in their parenting styles. Then we learn that, and then you pass it on to your kids. Things like that. It's like these core beliefs and lessons and traumatic events that we go through that we then pass on, not consciously, to the next generation.
Yeah, and I think, do you feel that we're saying the wrong questions or looking at the lens differently with regards to mental health? Because, as I mentioned, it's a growing concern now that more and more children, especially, are taking their own life. As young as 13, I think I heard. But
Mm.
where are we going wrong?
Again, this is a very complex question. I think there's so many things that I contributing to that. But I think we really just need to start having these conversations. We need to start communicating more about this and helping our children as well understand their emotions and also how to be resilient. That's
Mhm.
another thing that's been a big issue is people don't have that resilience. Then they're not knowing how to stand up for themselves, to be true to themselves and be confident in knowing who they are and what they want in life. Like that is something a lot of people struggle with. So having that resilience is something that really needs to be worked on.
100% agree with you with regards to resiliency, because I think one of the worst mistakes parents can make in raising kids is helicopter parenting, is becoming attached to the hip and not
Yeah,
encouraging the child to pick themselves up and figure it out on themselves.
absolutely.
It's like, one of my kids who I teach jujitsu, he fell over, he hurt himself. And I just had a chat with him. Sometimes in life things happen. We fall over, we have to get back up. Sometimes no one's going to be there to help you. You're going to have to do this yourself. And we had a good chat, and it was a really good chat. But I think, yeah, that is sometimes a bit of a problem that parents do, is they helicopter parent. And
Yes.
I think one of the worst things you can do is just spoil your child. And resiliency is so super important, being able to push through hard times, because life is fucking hard. It's really
Mm.
difficult. And if you can teach your children at a young age to overcome hardship and adversity and building resiliency and, getting into some sort of activity, whether it be combat sports, martial arts, rugby, soccer,
Hmm.
these are important skills that we can really teach our children. I mean, why is the ice bath thing so popular now? Like, people jump in the ice bath and they're doing all these crazy things. But what are some of the things that you talk about on your podcast, Paris,
Oh,
besides mental health?
it's a huge priority. Hey, like, it ranges between, I mean, honestly, it's all the shit that's fucked, right?
Mm.
like just before, I mean, I was late to recording this because I was recording another podcast and we were talking about functional neurological disorders and
Oh,
how, yeah,
interesting.
and how they are, it's a rising, it's a very common neurological disorder that's happening in Australia, and there's not a lot of education around it. So that's just some of the things that we talk about, as well as, I do have a lot of people that come on to share their addiction recovery stories, because that is very much my niche, because that's my lived experience. But I like to still explore other topics. I mean, we've talked about unhealthy relationship dynamics and, how to gain your own self-worth and self-love, and how to remove yourself from those types of scenarios. And I guess we've talked about the healthcare systems a lot. We've talked about, a lady who was married to a con man. Like,
Yeah.
there's been all sorts of different things that we have spoken about. But yeah, it's all been very insightful and really interesting. And it's just been really awesome to see how each person has navigated whatever challenge they've experienced in their life, whether that's mental health, addiction, or like, a neurological condition, or anything else like that, where they've had to face something and then, I guess, come out the other side of it. It's been, yeah, really inspiring. It's been amazing to be talking to so many fascinating people.
Yeah. How many guests have you interviewed now? Or how many episodes
Uh,
are you up to?
I actually don't know. So I think, yeah, I don't really keep on top of this stuff. I think it's about maybe 30, 40,
Yeah.
maybe more. I don't know. Probably around that mark.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. And with your own experience, it's pretty remarkable that you're able to turn your pain into purpose. And what have you learnt about yourself? Other than resiliency, you mentioned resiliency. Like, what have you learnt about yourself with regards to being able to channel that in the positive way that you're doing?
Oh man, there is so much work I've had to do to get where I am now, and that's been a big part of it. So, learning all these core beliefs that I had and unlearning these unconscious behaviors, that was a hard one. But there's still things I'm learning today, like, about myself. Like, even just this week alone, I had like people-pleasing traits pop up. So very much, I mean, I do have a lot of trauma that I went through, and one of those I guess effects that I've had from that is I'm always like, how is this person feeling? Are they angry at me? Are they okay? And then I'll just totally betray myself in the process. I'll quieten myself right down, because I don't want to deal with the conflict. I don't want to deal with someone else being upset at me. Like, it distresses me to a point where I stop functioning. Like, I shut down. I'm like, I can't do it. But I'm slowly starting to face those sides of myself that need that extra work. And just really trying to be open and mindful that I don't know everything. I don't know everything. I'm constantly learning, and that I I want to keep learning from others as well. Other people are going to expand our knowledge. So yeah, there's just been a lot of new insights, and just a constant, what's the word? Just constantly evolving, constantly trying to be a better person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic what you're doing, and especially, you're talking about some very important topics too. Yeah. What about dating dynamics? Do you ever get in talking with about dating and what's been happening right now? Because it's a very fascinating topic, one that's very controversial. But have you talked about a little bit with this current dating scene?
I haven't actually. I've talked about, unhealthy like dynamics and things like that, but I haven't looked at the current dating scene now. I mean, enlighten me. What's going on?
So there's a few things we can go at it from a different angle. So right now, 50% of men say that they're not looking for a committed relationship.
Okay.
75% of women say that having a stable job is very, very important to have.
Hmm.
Socioeconomically, women are doing much better than men. So right now, by I think 2030, there'll be two women for every one man completing a 4-year US college degree.
Okay.
Because women are doing so well, generally they want somebody with equal social economic status, or if not more. So if a woman makes $100,000, generally she'll want her partner to make a little bit more or the same. The problem
Hmm.
is right now is because women now have just become so fantastic and just completely independent and just dominating employment, especially in science, technology, engineering, and math. Hypergamy, which is the female tendency to date up and across. So biologically, women are wired to select sexual partners that are as competent or more competent. If you look at dating apps, right, women will only swipe right on about 4%, while men will swipe right on 60%. So you have a large cohort of women chasing a very small cohort of high achieving men. You
Yeah.
have a large portion of men at the bottom, which are just completely invisible, that don't get any female attention whatsoever. The guys that are at the top, the super high value guys, have just a plethora of options. You know, they can just use and discard these women, and the women obviously end up becoming resentful and say, well, fuck this, I'm just going to lean into my career. And, you know, I think men are obviously having a difficult time even, you know, being attractive towards women. So
Mm.
it's a little bit of a conundrum that I think that's happening in the world right now. So what do you
Mm.
think?
It's hard to say because I haven't been single for a while, so I don't really see a lot of that stuff. But I do know from like friends who are still single are finding it very difficult to meet someone that is compatible as well. And I know from my own like talking out of my own personal experience, I dated a lot of frogs. Like I don't think I think also because of where I was at in life, like I obviously was dealing with a lot of addictions and things like that. My priorities were very different. I wasn't thinking about, who's going to make more money or anything like that. I was very much like, as long as you make me happy, I don't care. Like, because I was seeking happiness, constantly externally. So, I expected that from my partner too. So that was more important to me than anything else. But yeah, but I can see like as we get older, especially, in your 30s, you do start to look more at that because you're looking to your future and what you want and you've got certain goals. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I can understand like if that is the case, if that's what's happening, I could see
Yeah.
why. But yeah, I mean, what do we do about that? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, 50% of women are childless at the age of 30. So
Yes.
there are more women without children than there are with children. We also have a declining birth rate. We are
I
below
did hear
replacement.
that.
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
below replacement as well. Um, there is also a movement, I think, where certain parts of the world, women say that being a stay-at-home mum, they chastise that. And I'm thinking, hang on a second, for something that we're all grateful for, having a beautiful mum that gave birth to us is the most beautiful fucking thing on the planet. So, and then as well, a sad thing is, I think when women get to a certain age, once they hit that threshold, where they're about 38, 39, 40, biology kicks in, and sometimes women also regret leaning into their career, and they always want that family too. And I think that the saying goes, you can have it all, it's just you can't have it all at once. So I think these are some of the things that we need to be mindful for and really educate not just women but also men.
Mm.
um, because I do worry about our declining birth rate, and I think, yeah, especially with women and what they're capable of doing, it's the most beautiful thing on the planet, to be able to conceive and give life. But it also takes two people for that. So where do we go from here? I think we just need to sort of work together as a community, bring couples together. I think scrap the apps because they're not really helpful at all. And I think
Mm.
encourage more meeting people in person. That's what I think
Yeah.
most people should do anyways.
Yeah.
But Paris, I'll have to get you back on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so
And where
much.
where where can people find you? So you're on the socials, but also you're on Spotify. You've got your channel.
Yep, yep. So I've got a website as well. So www.shtsfcked.com. So shitsfuck.com. And my handle is pretty much the same on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I am also on TikTok. I also am on Spotify, Amazon, Apple. I'm on all the streaming things. You can find me anywhere, really.
Amazing, Paris. No, so good to talk to you. And yeah, definitely I'll have to get you back on the podcast too. And you're doing some amazing things, especially in the space of mental health. And
Thank
what you've
you.
overcome is truly remarkable.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Paris.
No worries. See
Thank
ya.
you.